There's something truly odd about the silence between Prince William and Prince Harry. You'd think two brothers, once inseparable and famously close, would have found their way back to each other by now. But they haven't. And according to royal author Ingrid Seward, there's a very specific reason why. Meghan Markle. Now, pause right there. This isn't just another finger-pointing session at Meghan. We've all heard a million takes, theories, and hot opinions online. But this one hits differently because it isn't coming from tabloid gossip. It's coming from someone who's been embedded in the royal beat for over 2 decades. Seward, the editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, claims William's hesitation has everything to do with trust, or rather, the lack of it. She says it's not even about Harry anymore. It's about the person next to him. William apparently doesn't trust Meghan. Not because of drama, jealousy, or some royal rivalry, but because of what Meghan represents to him: unpredictability, disloyalty, and the very real fear that anything said behind palace walls could be used in a podcast, an interview, or, let's be honest, another Netflix show. And it's not paranoia either. Let's not forget the Sussexes' sit down with Oprah, the Spotify drama, the memoir. All of it sent a very clear message. The institution was up for criticism, and private conversations weren't off limits. So, from William's perspective, how do you rebuild a relationship with your brother if every word you say might end up public? That's not just awkward. It's dangerous when you're next in line for the throne. And it's not just William who feels this way. According to Seward, a large chunk of monarchy supporters, those die-hard traditionalists in the UK, can't stand Meghan. And while public opinion shouldn't dictate a family reunion, in the royal world, perception is everything. If you're the future king, you don't just act for yourself. You represent an entire institution. So if your brother's wife is seen by many as a disruptor or a liability, how do you openly embrace that without risking your own standing? But it runs deeper than just public perception. There's this lingering narrative Meghan's painted over the years, and Seward thinks it's made reconciliation nearly impossible. Meghan hasn't just distanced herself from the royal family. She's distanced herself from both sides of her family. Her father, Thomas Markle, hasn't met Harry. That's right. Her own husband has never even shaken hands with the man who raised her. That detail alone says a lot. And it's not about defending Thomas Markle. No one's pretending he's a saint. But come on, how does Harry never once meet him? You'd think that would be a natural step in any serious relationship, even if it was just to see things for yourself, to get a feel for who this man really is. But it never happened. And that's the point Seward makes. If Meghan can cut off her own family so completely, what's stopping her from doing the same with Harry's? It paints a very specific image. A person who doesn't mend bridges, but burns them. And when you're part of a family like the Windsors, where discretion and loyalty are currency, that's terrifying. Because once that trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. Especially when every reunion comes with the risk of becoming tomorrow's headline. And look, maybe William's being overly cautious. Maybe he's letting fear get in the way of family. But at the same time, he has a lot to lose. He's not just a brother, he's the heir. What really stings about this entire situation is how avoidable it all feels. It's not like the issues between Harry and William came out of nowhere. They didn't explode overnight. There were signs, small cracks in the foundation, and people close to the family saw them coming. But no one thought they'd get this far. Two brothers who shared everything, now walking completely separate paths like strangers. Royal insiders have said that before Meghan entered the picture, the brothers had disagreements like any siblings. But there was still a strong bond. They'd been through too much together, losing their mother, growing up in the harsh spotlight, serving in the military. There was a deep respect. But over time, the shift in tone was noticeable. According to Ingrid Seward, Meghan didn't just disrupt the royal family's dynamic, she became the reason William stopped trying. It's not about jealousy. That theory gets thrown around too casually, like William just couldn't handle Harry being happy or getting attention. But it's not that. It's about Meghan creating an unpredictable element within a family that thrives on order. When Meghan and Harry left, they didn't just exit royal life quietly. They aired grievances, launched deals, and made sure the public knew why they left. The timing, the messaging, it all felt strategic. And for William, it was personal. One of the biggest issues raised by Seward is that Meghan seems to have no ties left to anyone she grew up with. Her father, half-siblings, extended family, completely cut off. Even her children, Archie and Lilibet, have had almost zero connection with either side of their grandparents. Lilibet reportedly only met King Charles once, at the Jubilee. One meeting. That's it. And Thomas Markle? He's aging, unwell, and still hasn't met Harry or his own grandchildren. Seward highlights how jarring it is that Meghan's kids don't know their grandparents. It's not just sad, it says something deeper. If someone's able to erase that many people from their life, there's a pattern worth looking at. And it's this pattern that makes William hesitant. To him, it doesn't look like self-preservation. It looks like a willingness to discard people once they no longer serve a purpose. That kind of approach terrifies anyone in a close-knit family, especially one as public and scrutinized as the British royals. There's also the issue of media control. Senior royals are deeply cautious about privacy, not because they have things to hide, but because of how easily narratives get twisted. Every word can be turned into a headline, every glance into a scandal. And with Meghan and Harry having signed media deals, including podcasts and documentaries, there's a fear that private conversations could be weaponized. Royal commentator Hilary Fordwich echoed that sentiment, noting that the monarchy sees Meghan as someone who doesn't share their sense of duty. That's a powerful accusation. For a royal, duty is everything. It's the glue that holds the whole institution together. Once that's questioned, trust breaks fast. And William, more than anyone, has to protect that. He can't afford to treat this like a regular family feud. The stakes are higher. Any olive branch extended has to come with absolute assurance that it won't end up as content. But how do you get that kind of assurance when the track record says otherwise? That's the tightrope William is walking. His brother on one side, his country and future role on the other. And then there's the emotional cost. This isn't some cold, calculated standoff. There's real pain underneath all of it. You can see it in the way both brothers avoid speaking about each other. The tension's not just professional, it's deeply personal, and it's tearing their legacy apart. There's something undeniably tragic about watching a family fracture in front of the entire world. Strip away the palaces, titles, and formal wear, and it's just two brothers who clearly don't know how to find their way back to each other. The saddest part? The person who might have been able to fix it all isn't here anymore. Princess Diana. People often forget that Diana wasn't just a public icon. She was a mother first, and she loved her boys fiercely. Those who knew her best believed she would have never let it get this bad. She would have stepped in long before the distance turned into silence. Some say she'd have sided with Harry. Others say she would have understood William's sense of duty. But the truth is, she likely would have pushed both to sit down, shut out the noise, and remember who they were before the cameras and the drama. Instead, that role has been left vacant, and the vacuum has only grown. Harry has leaned into Diana's rebellious legacy, taking bold swings at the monarchy, calling out what he sees as injustice. William, on the other hand, has tried to embody the version of stability his father never could. The result? Two opposing legacies from the same woman, clashing under the weight of global expectations. And at the center of this mess is Meghan, whether she wants to be or not. Every move she makes gets dissected. Every outfit, every Instagram story, every speech, somehow it always circles back to the feud. Supporters say she's being unfairly blamed for a family already broken. Critics say she lit the match and walked away. Either way, she's become the lightning rod for all of it. What doesn't help is how some of her recent public appearances feel more like signals than coincidences. A sudden rebrand, a carefully curated solo lifestyle, elegant photo shoots with a distinct absence of family. Each moment seems tailored to control the narrative. And it's not wrong to protect your image, but in this case, it's giving the impression that distance is exactly what she prefers. Meanwhile, Harry's caught in a strange in-between space. He's not fully integrated into Hollywood, but he's no longer a working royal either. His memoir revealed deep resentment and pain, but also a man who clearly still longs for his family. The question is whether he even knows how to rebuild those bridges anymore, or if he's too far gone. There's also a generational ripple effect that no one seems to talk about. Archie and Lilibet are growing up without real ties to either side of their heritage. They're not part of palace life, but they're not fully grounded in American normality either. They're somewhere in the middle, being raised by two people who've cut ties with almost everyone from their own childhoods. That isolation might not show now, but it could have long-term consequences. Royal relationships have always been complicated. Add in media contracts, documentaries, global attention, and decades of institutional pressure, and it's no wonder this one feels impossible to repair. Still, there's a kind of universal hope that clings to stories like this. Because at the end of the day, it's not about titles or reputations. It's about family. And no one wants to believe that two brothers who once leaned on each other through the worst moments of their lives could let pride, politics, and pain win in the end. Maybe someday there's a chance for healing. But as long as the silence continues, and as long as Meghan remains the symbol of mistrust in William's eyes, that day feels very far away.